And I just fell in love with the story. I remember we had a meeting and I said, I'm going to need 10. I need $10,000. But that year, we took 8 people around the country for $4,000 an episode. And we told these stories, 8 crew members.
That's
Like,
insane.
I didn't pay myself. My dad, product placement wizard, helped get us hotel stays and was making calls for us to say, we're telling these stories. It's going to be on SoulPancake. People are going to watch it. Can you help? And people helped. This was almost like a nonprofit. And at the end of it, Zach's episode ended up kind of breaking the internet. It was 20 minutes long. It was a full story.
Yeah.
It was like a little short film,
hundreds of
documentary.
millions of views.
And, in the first month, I think it got 14 million views. Upworthy, It crashed Upworthy's site. It's how Upworthy built their new algorithm. And his song hit #1 on iTunes. And, all of these people became like family and like little brothers to me. And so they are my angels who I talk to all the time. They are my people. And then I went on to make another season when I got Jane the Virgin. The first thing I did when I got Jane the Virgin was I asked the CW. I said, I made this show. It's a beautiful show. I'd love to make this for your network. And we got them to let us make it digitally.
Yeah.
And I think that was the same thing. Let's do like 10-minute episodes, 20-minute episodes. But I said, I think this can be on TV. This has got to be on TV. So I made 30-minute episodes for the same budget. And eventually the president of the network saw it and said, this should be on TV. And My Last Days, season 2, which we did together, premiered on the CW. And that's where I met Claire Wineland. And how that all circles back is my first movie was 5 Feet Apart, which was inspired by my little sister, Claire Wineland. And my second movie was Clouds, which was inspired by Zach. And all of this, and Wayfair Studios, my company now, and my studio, it all points back to when you had started your organization for the same reasons that I do what I do, which is in the spirit of service. How can we make a difference? You then gave me the opportunity to tell these stories and to find my passion and my service, which has been carried on, over the last 15 years.
Early on at SoulPancake, in one of our first meetings, I was like, I want to do a show about death. That was like,
I had no idea. We never talked about it.
That was a mandate. And I love that we were this YouTube channel. Like, no one would do stories about death.
No.
And then early on after that first season, we went into MTV to pitch it as a TV show. And I'll never forget sitting with the heads of MTV. We showed them the sizzle reel. And
I remember that.
And the lights came, we turned the lights up on the conference room and they were sobbing. And tears are pouring on their face. And they were like, that was so beautiful. We could never make it as a TV show. Yeah. We could never put it on the air. It's like, why? It's like, because we have to sell Pop-Tarts on the commercials and they'll be scared of a show about death. No one would touch this show about death. It had hundreds of millions of views, launched your career, brought so much hope and joy to people. We would get letters all the time of people who say, I wake up every morning, the first thing I do is watch an episode of My Last Days.
Yeah.
Because it shows me how precious it is to be alive. And every single day they watch an episode.
And that's why we made it. We always said, shout out to my partner, Ahmed. He was my producing partner on the show. We always said that there was a comment on one of Zach's episodes that Ahmed found where it was a former veteran he was in the military, so he was a veteran, and he wrote on the comments that he was going to take his life. But he went on and somehow found My Last Days, and he didn't. And that moment, again, it's just like the Aaliyah moment, and just like, that moment for me and for Ahmed, I'll never forget. It's like, oh, this is why we're doing it. There was no money. We didn't make any money on that show. We didn't have a company. Like, there was nothing to gain from it, but something that we made, that we went out and we made with the spirit of service and with the intention to make a difference, actually saved somebody's life. Now, whether that was us or Zach or, it was all of us together creating this thing. And that man is still alive today because of it. And we said, this is why we're doing it. This is why we make the show. And we've carried that, and I've carried that into everything that I've done. It's like, that's been the protection. Why are we doing this? Because time is so short.
Yeah.
We are here. It's like we're here for like a blip.
And believe me, when you're my age, you start to really feel that.
I'm 40 now. I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it. And it's scary and it's also exciting. And it's like this feeling of like we need to arise and not take it for granted, which was why I made the show in my 20s, because I was wrestling with this idea of mortality.
Mm.
Baha'u'llah says, I have made death a messenger of joy for thee. Wherefore dost thou grieve? And I didn't understand how it could be joyful. I struggled with it. And that's what the show was about for me. I was
you
like,
made death a message of joy.
I was like,
in that
oh,
show.
how can I make death joyful? And I found these people who were joyful while dying. And that has stayed with me and has influenced every single area. And because of that, we're able to have this conversation now. Like it's a part of everything you do. It's part of everything I do.
Not everything. Occasionally I whore myself out.
Yeah.
You know,
you're good at that.
I don't want to get into it too much, but you did 5 Feet Apart and Clouds, which were beautiful, inspiring stories. They've helped a lot of folks on their mental health crisis and issues. And you've founded Wayfarer Studios along with Steve Sarowitz and Jamie Heath. And this is your mandate. And before we get to It Ends With Us, how the hell are you supposed to tell these stories that are good for people and be entertaining at the same time? It's such a difficult struggle, because the last thing anyone wants to do is like go to a movie theater if there's like some story that's supposed to be good for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the old Life cereal commercial, like get Mikey to eat it. It's supposed to be good for you, but it tastes great. That's something we've always struggled with. And people ask me all the time, like, why doesn't Hollywood make better stories? Why doesn't Hollywood make stories that, heal and unite and bring people together? And while there are some of those stories out there, part of it is, serial killer movies and horror slasher films sell better, and Hollywood ultimately at the end of the day is a business. And if there was a bigger audience for those films, they would be made right and left. But you've walked that tightrope very delicately and very well. But what's that sweet sauce of entertainment and social good?
It's believing that people and humanity are inherently good. And they crave nutritious food in their soul, just as they do in their bodies. And the problem is that we've been feeding the public junk food for so long. We've begun
You get used to junk
to
food.
think that that's how food should be, and
Yeah.
that's how food should taste. And so we've forgotten.
Yeah.
I think we've forgotten. I mean, the purpose of storytelling was always to entertain, but there was always a moral message in the storytelling. I mean, you go back and you read these
Or
ancient,
a soul, and maybe not moral, but a soul enriching message.
soul enriching. Well, yeah. I mean, for me, morality just is we're talking about life, and we're able to gain something from it. I think the misconception about what we do and what I do or what we're trying to do is that we're trying to serve people broccoli because it's good for you. And that's not exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to say something. And I think that, there's so many stories that you have in your life or I have in my life. When you look, you're like, I couldn't have written that. Or that this thing just happened, and like, wow, that would be an incredible movie. And that never gets made. Because life is the greatest storyteller. Like, stories are everywhere, and we want these types of stories. What we don't want is to be, we don't want virtue signaling. We don't want people to tell us how we should be so that we feel bad at the end of something if we're not that. And we want to be like wrapped up in an adventure, in a story, in somebody's life.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you love Soul Boom clips, you're going to love the original mothership, Soul Boom. Please click and subscribe over there as well.